The Lost Zone comes in and out of the Pokemon game, but I think it's an important aspect. Welcome to Jank Play TCG. My name's Landon, and here we play Jank. And I want to talk about the Lost Zone. The Lost Zone is currently very popular. Lost Box is a very good deck, and it looks like it's going to continue to be a very good deck in the new standard format after rotation. So Scarlet and Violet's coming soon. I'm kind of preparing to do a ton of content with Scarlet and Violet, and so I wanted to get this kind of out of the way, if you want to say. The Lost Zone is important to the Pokemon TCG, just like a lot of TCGs have a remove from game effect that is very important. So to talk about how important the Lost Zone is, I have to address what the discard pile is. The discard pile is a place that cards go after they're used, or when they are used for a cost to a particular card. They go into the discard pile. However, there's a lot of cards that interact with the discard pile, and that's a very important aspect of any TCG. You can discard cards and gain them back later to use, or they gain effects while in the discard, or something like that. The Lost Zone is closer to a remove from play effect, where there is no recovery from there. It is gone. You put in the Lost Zone, it is gone for the rest of the game. Gone forever, basically. And I think that's important, and something that we lose out on fairly often whenever we start getting cards that don't use the Lost Zone. Now, I don't think every set has to have cards focused on the Lost Zone. If that was a thing in Pokemon TCG development, it would get kind of stale. We would get one or two cards per set that deal with the Lost Zone, and nothing much more, and it would hard to become what it is currently, which is a very important type of play. But I do think when we don't have it, when we have cards that aren't using it, we lose something in the TCG. We lose that cost to certain effects. This is based off a conversation I had a long time ago with a friend of mine. He goes by Mostly Not Gaming, and he talked about how, at least I think it was him, he's got some really good opinions about Pokemon stuff. I just don't know the last time he uploaded a video. But he talked about how the discard pile is not like paying for a card. If you send something to the discard pile, you're not paying a cost for the card, because you're just going to play a card to get that stuff back anyways, so it's not really a cost that you're paying. You're just delaying the inevitable, you know? You're going to get that card eventually, you just got to recover it first now. I did disagree, and I still kind of do. I do think the discard pile can still be a cost. You know, it still costs you a slot in your deck to play that pal pad to recover supporters. It costs you that slot in your deck of, say, Ordinary Rod, even though that's rotating, to recover those Pokemon and that energy. It costs you something to recover those cards. So I still think the discard pile is a good cost. But the Lost Zone is so important in the fact that you cannot recover from it. That you can print cards that are so powerful that sending the cards to the Lost Zone is a justified cost. And I think Comfy, let me switch to PTCGL, Comfy here is a very good example of the cost that comes with the Lost Zone. You look at the top two cards of your deck, and you put one of them into your hand, and the other in the Lost Zone to never be seen again. That's not a big selection you have, but it is a +1 to your hand. A guaranteed +1 with quite a cost, you know? I think that's important. I think stuff like Comfy is important to the game, because removing cards from the game is a high enough cost that justifies a great benefit, such as a +1 to your hand, without even playing an item card. Like, when you're playing Trekking Shoes, you look at the top card of your deck, you choose whether to add that to your hand or discard it, and draw the next card of your deck. No matter what, that's a +0. You have to pay the cost of playing Trekking Shoes for the opportunity to discard the top card, or just draw it. So you're paying 1 card to draw 1 card. Either way, it's a +0 in your hand. Comfy, you could say playing it down is a cost. So the first time you use flower selecting is a +0. But every time after that is a +1. And I think that's where we can really see the power of Comfy. We see it all the time in gameplay of people getting a bunch of Comfies down by scoop up net, switching, escape rope even, Comfies in and out of the active to use flower selecting as much as they possibly can. Scoop up net being the best way to do it. And you just using flower selecting as many times as they can to gain that much benefit as they can. And it's really powerful. And then, on top of that, you have certain effects. Let's look at Sableye here, like Lost Mine. You can use this attack only if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. And you put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. I have a separate video about damage versus damage counters. Damage counters are kind of more powerful than damage, honestly. The only negative about damage counters over damage is you cannot play a modifier to increase it. Damage you can through like Choice Belt, Vitality Band, but Lost Mine you cannot add more damage counters to this attack, so it's always going to be 12. But the cost is you have to get 10 cards into the Lost Zone before you can use Lost Mine. 10 cards. So if we look at that from the beginning of the game, right? You have a 60 card deck, right? I'm going to get a calculator out here just so I can show exactly what I'm talking about. 60 card deck, right? Minus 6 prize cards. 54 cards. Minus, you start your hand with 7 cards. 47 cards. One more. Minus 1. We draw 1 card for the beginning of our turn. So we have 46 cards. 46 cards to work with in your deck, right? I keep motioning over here like you guys can see the table. You can't. We have 46 cards in your deck at the start of the game. Turn 1, you have 46 cards left in your deck. And you have to get 10 of those into the Lost Zone. Now you can play Lost Vacuum to discard to Lost Zone 1 card from your hand. Okay, fair. But Flower Selecting affects the deck. Colress's Experiment affects the deck. You draw cards from the deck, and then you Lost Zone from those cards that you drew. So already, we have to take it down 10 cards. You're down to 36 cards. Just to do it on the calculator, minus 10. 36 cards left to play with. Now, in all fairness, you most likely drew more than 10 cards that way. Colress, you draw 3, discard 2. Or not discard, Lost Zone, sorry. Lost Zone 2, right? So you most likely drew more than 10 cards that way. So you have even less cards in your deck. And that is only if you use these Lost Zoning effects to draw cards. That's not counting things like Professor's Research to draw cards. That's not counting things like Quick Ball or Ultra Ball to discard cards to search your deck for other cards. So already you have to Lost Zone 10 cards, leaving you with 36 cards to play out the rest of the game with. Not to mention you were drawing cards and doing other things while getting to that 10 in the Lost Zone. So I think that really shows the high price that you have to pay removing these cards from play to where you can't even recover them to prevent yourself from decking out like other games can. Lost Zone seems to me, Lost Box at least, seems to me to be vulnerable to a mill type strategy. Although I haven't seen that be very popular in the game. Obviously, Durant is possibly one of the best mill cards, and that mills 4 per turn. 4. Most Lost Box decks are drawing way more than 4 cards, Lost Zoning more than 4 cards per turn. All they have to do is flower select twice and play Colress's Experiment, and they just lost zone 4 cards themselves while drawing 5 cards. And then Durant comes in, mills 4 more. And how much recovery is Lost Box playing? This is getting into another rant about Lost Box and whether or not it's viable, or how to counter it. I don't know how well Durant can really counter Lost Box, because Lost Box has such a unique way to slow down if they really need to. They don't need to go for Sableye. They can Cramorant every turn. 110 will KO a Durant, and they only need 4 cards in the Lost Zone, which they can often do turn 1 going second. Turn 1 going second, they flower select twice, they Colress's Experiment, they have 4 cards in the Lost Zone, and Cramorant is active and can attack for 110. That's pretty nuts to me. But it just goes to show how expensive the Lost Zone is, how the discard pile is not really that expensive because you can recover from it, and all it takes is a slot in your deck, you know? Yeah, that is the importance of the Lost Zone. So it's a mechanic that comes in and out of the TCG. Even since I've been playing, which was basically the start of Sun and Moon, we've seen it twice now. Once it was, like, the Prism Stars was a very long time of Lost Zone mattering, you know? But then this Lost Box takes it to a whole nother level. Flower Selecting, Colress's Experiment, Cramorant, Giratina V-Star, Rotom V-Star, a deck that I've played on this channel, you know? Lost Zone is important to the TCG. I wish it could be around more. I think it's very important to have a remove from game effect in standard play. Because imagine if there was a quick ball, but it Lost Zoned a card rather than discarding it, and you could grab any card you want rather than just a basic. You know? So like Nest Ball only grabs a basic. And Ultra Balls discard 2 for 1 card of any type. Imagine a Quick Ball that was Lost Zone 1, but grab any type of, any Pokemon, you know? I could see that being very interesting. But it's not going to happen unless the Lost Zone is a normal thing we see. Because, like, only having one set every 3 years deal with the Lost Zone. And even then, this one set, this is all the cards that have Lost Zone in the name. Or not in the name, but in the text somewhere. These are all the cards that affect the Lost Zone in some way. The Pokemon cards. If we go trainers. All. Yep. Lost Zone. Even less cards. And you want to see the funny part? Energy. Lost Zone. No energy affect that. So, in trainers, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 cards. Only, 2 of them Lost Zone your cards willingly. Lost City is kind of a weirder one. It does Lost Zone your cards, but only when your opponent takes KOs. So, I don't really count it. But, and then we go to Pokemon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. So that's 15. Plus 3, 18 cards. Oh, 2 of them are Rotom V as well. Like, do you really count Giratina and Giratina, or Giratina V and Giratina V Star separately? Not really, you know? Like, even then, it gets a little bit weirder. Even less cards. So, even if we subtract, like, Rotom V and... Or just this one Rotom V, I guess. The first one does actually have something to do with the Lost Zone. What does this one do? Put a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon in the Lost Zone. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll count that. Giratina. Okay, some draw. Let's just count it. 18 cards. 18 Pokemon cards. Plus, what was it? 5 trainers? That's it? 22 cards 23 cards in total. I'm good at math. 23 cards in total deal with the Lost Zone, and it is a dominant deck in the format. The Lost Zone needs to stick around. I think it's important for game health to have a remove from play effect stick around throughout every set. However, I understand that if it did, it would not be nearly this powerful of a strategy. So I have mixed feelings about it. Let me know what you think of the Lost Zone. Should we see cards every set that deal with the Lost Zone, or should it be a rare effect that comes and goes in the format and we only see once every 3 to 4 sets? Let me know down in the comments. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join the Discord so we can have more one-on-one conversations. And of course, until next time, keep playing Jank.